All right, Vince. So your artist statement doesn't really explain what your work is about. It explains you as a photographer. And what we'd like to see is more about the project, and especially given your project. Your project for this class ended up being really fascinating, and I'd love to hear more about what your images are about. So as you move forward in the program, you'll make more artist statements. And what you're putting together here is more of a bio. And what we want when we look at artist statements is to tell more of the why behind the images. And because your images are not at all what I would have expected from you for a final project, I'm even more curious to get that why from you. Why are you photographing these objects? You also mentioned that you were interested in tintypes, and a tintype got you interested in photography. And that's what I did in my thesis. I did my whole thesis in wet plate collodion. So if you have questions about that, I'd be ecstatic to talk to you about that. All right, and then all of your images have titles. And um, I'm not able to see those as I'm looking at your images, but I'm so curious about them. Bury a broken mirror under the kitchen window. Like, I've never heard that saying before. And it seems like a lot of these are just sayings that I've never heard before. So I'm curious where they come from. Spilled salt, of course. Long black train. Sell a wart for a penny. Like, I've never heard these things before. So I'm curious where they all come from. All right, so something I can almost 100% guarantee is when students turn in images and they're shot over the course of multiple days, they're going to be stronger. And as we look at your images, you shot them over multiple days on the 11th and on the 8th. And even on the 11th, when you were photographing them, we can see that you started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and were photographing all day into the evening until 7 o'clock. So I can tell you've spent a lot of time on these images, and that really comes through. On the technical side, let's look here at ISO 320, 800, 160. So you bounce around from 800 to 160. So you're keeping it fairly low. And when I look at them larger, we'll double check that you don't have any digital noise. Your shutter speeds sometimes are a little bit slower, but you're adjusting your shutter speed and aperture for all of these. Nothing has a lot of depth of field, but none of these images, I guess image number 5 would lend itself to a lot of depth of field, but not really anything else. The light on your images seems really intentional. It's soft light in every single image, and it creates a mood in every image. It's not just bright light. It's not just informing the image. It's also starting to tell a story with the image. Here, having the overhead light just illuminating the Bible. Here, having the soft, like we feel the dampness of the tree. Here, the window light on the back side of the onion. This is just really direct, intentional lighting in this image. This is the most beautiful lighting to me of all of the images, maybe that and this mirror image. The color in all of your images are these earth tones throughout every single image. Even when you're taking an image of a portrait, we have these earth tones. And when we look at this as a series, that really brings it together. It looks very visually cohesive. The composition that you have is varied. So we have, a clear subject that's a line and then texture. We have a bird's eye view. Here you're getting on level with your subject. Here we have a worm's eye view. Here you're looking at shape and line and pattern. So a lot of compositional elements are going into each of these images. Let's just double check them larger. This image is at 1/2000th of a second. And it's still, I'm wondering if this is just like closer to the lens and falling out of focus. It almost feels like there's movement in this image, but with that fast of a shutter speed, I can't imagine that there would be movement. Really shallow depth of field, working well here. Perfectly sharp. This is a great example of a really nice, sharp, selective focus. This image has a little bit of movement in it. It's a really strong image, but we want to make sure you're on a tripod so we can actually read the words here. Nice and sharp, shallow depth of field. Again, I'm sure that image is much harder to get in focus with that really shallow depth of field. Everything's nice and sharp here, and everything's nice and sharp there. Then we had some images with higher ISOs, but I'm not noticing any digital noise. I suppose if we look closely back here, we would see it, but it's not interrupting the subject. So this is an outstanding final series for you. A lot of thought went into each of these images, varied subjects, but really cohesive in style and in color. I'm really impressed by this final project. You did a great job.